My name's Kevin with Hotshot Repair, and today I'm taking a look at an iPhone 6 Plus that has a pretty obvious case of touch disease, where the most obvious symptom of touch disease would be a flickering gray box near the top of the screen. And here you can kind of see it, flickering away. If I twist the frame, it kind of goes away. Flex the frame, it goes away. Flex the frame the other way, and it starts coming back. To fix this, we have to remove the Mason chip on the logic board. So we have to take this phone apart to get to the logic board in it. So we're going to start by removing the two screws in the bottom of the phone. They're pentalobe screws. You need a special screwdriver for them. We lift up on the screen. Then use a Phillips screwdriver to remove the two screws on the battery connector cover. Then we unplug the battery just to be safe. Then there's 5 screws in the LCD connector cover. These are all the different sizes, so you're going to want to keep them organized. Keep them where they should go. I just kind of lay them out on my mat in an order. We unplug the proximity sensor, the home button, the LCD, and the digitizer. We're going to set that screen aside because we're going to use it to test. Even though it is broken, we're going to use it as a test screen. Now we unplug the charger port. Remove the 2 screws in the Taptic engine and set those aside. Unplug the antenna and fold the Taptic engine back. Then we're going to remove the 2 screws in the power button connector cover. Unplug the power and volume buttons, and while we're up here we're going to unplug the camera. Then I'm going to remove the 3 screws in the Bluetooth antenna, or the Wi-Fi antenna. Unplug the antenna, pull it back, and remove it. We're going to remove the however many screws, 4, 5 screws. Set those aside. Unplug the SIM tray, fold the battery back, and then remove Bluetooth antenna, and here's the logic board. Now the chip we're going to be looking at specifically is this chip right here, which is the Mason chip. It's the one most prone to failure. When you see a flickering gray box at the top of the screen, it is the chip most likely responsible. So we need to start by removing this chip and taking a look at the pads underneath it, because in most cases you'll see a pad that comes from right here get torn off, and then you have to run a jumper from this spot right here over into that pad. So we need to start by removing that chip and taking a look at the underside of that logic board. Taking a look at that logic board and seeing what it looks like, and seeing if any pads are missing or become missing after we clean it up, because they don't always come right off. Usually they're just crimped and weak, so as you're cleaning it they'll pull off. So that's when we'll see any damage that's occurred to it. We need to start by heating up some equipment here. Alright, let's get under the microscope here and see what we're looking at. Now first, what we're going to want to do is kind of heat this area up a little bit so we can get some flux underneath that chip. There's plenty of space to grab this chip, and we're just going to put light pressure up on it. Pull it off. As soon as that chip lets go, you want to get the heat off there. Now if we take a look here, you can kind of see that all the pads are present right now, but I really suspect this one's going to come loose at some point. And I'll probably even run a jumper just to be sure. Now that the chip is off there, we're going to put a little bit of flux on here. Get out my tweezers. And we're going to be removing the unleaded solder from this logic board. Unleaded solder melts at a higher temperature than what we'd like, so we want to get as much leaded solder over there as we can. And the way solder kind of works is we are exchanging unleaded for leaded, kind of creating an alloy that melts at kind of a combined temperature to both. So solder melts at a lower temperature, unleaded melts at a higher temperature. So the combination of these two will melt at a temperature kind of in between. The more leaded we get on there, the lower the temperature we can use. This is important because once you get that chip off there, you have to use a higher temperature, such as about 390 degrees Celsius, to get that chip off because of the unleaded solder. I'd like not to use that high a temperature again. I'd like to keep it at around 300 to 325, which will keep all the unleaded solder in the areas around the chip we're working on from being affected by the heat. It won't melt, but the solder under this chip will. So that'll keep heat from soaking. It's not going to keep heat from soaking into the board, but it'll keep it from affecting kind of these components right here and the components underneath it. Alright, so now that we've got that done, now I'm using my ceramic tweezers in conjunction with a very fine braid solder wick. We're going to make kind of a brush. Now let's zoom in here. And we're just going to kind of work from left to right, working at about 300 degrees, and we're going to focus the heat kind of on this solder wick. We're trying to heat the solder wick more than we're trying to heat the logic board here. Flip it over. And this stuff's going to get loaded pretty quick. That's when we put more flux on it. Yeah, see? That little... we can kind of already see it right here. This is the common problem on most of these, is this pad is weak right here at this connection, so it will come right off. It's even preventing connection while it's still on there. So as soon as you put the littlest bit of pressure on there, you bend the frame or twist the frame, this pad comes clean off and will make intermittent connection. You know, when you twist the frame back, but with this chip gone, you can kind of see that this pad came right with it. So we're going to have to run a jumper to that pad. Now I want to get a little bit more of that solder off, specifically like right here. I want these solder pads to be as flat as possible so they don't interfere with the new balls that we put on this chip. So we want this thing to be as flat as possible. Now we really want to get alcohol and wash that area where we're going to be running a jumper. And I'll just kind of rotate the Q-tip around. We want that area to be as clean as possible so that the solder mask that we put on it will stick. Now we're going to need to zoom in. Go down as far as we can. Alright, now you just kind of take a deep breath and you can see where we're going to be working is on this pad right here, because it goes all the way over here. So we're just going to scrape away with that solder mask. Try not to break it. Alright. A little bit of flux. Get out my tweezers. And then keeps pulling away. Breathe right into the microphone. Alright, so we grab and touch my finger with the Alright. So, we got that part done. And then we just kind of fold it over. And I like to make a little loop. And then we hold this right here and grab that and cut. Then we can kind of fine tune it a little bit. We're just getting rid of the excess. We just kind of want that solder ball to rest right there on that copper. Now we're going to get some UV solder mask here. Put a little dab on my work area. And use a pair of tweezers to just kind of dab it and then deposit it right there. Right there. All right. And then we're going to put on my UV light and let that stuff cure. Alright, I'm back after letting the UV light cure that mask for about 5 minutes or so. We're taking a look at the logic board with the new jumper installed. And here you can kind of see how I've curled it in over where the pad should be. So a solder ball on the chip is going to rest right in there and settle in very nicely. To facilitate that, we're going to put a little bit flux and just a little bit of solder. We just want to tin it so that when we put that chip on there, it settles right into place, sucks down. There's our chip. We're going to put a little bit of flux on there. A lot of flux. We're going to go to work removing it. And we're just trying to pull away the unleaded solder. Stencil over the chip, put a little bead of solder paste on it. And we're just going to kind of rub it in. Filling each of those holes. Then we're going to put a glass slide over it and hold it down with tweezers. My soldering gun, or my hot air gun, is up to temperature, and we're just going to hold it over there until it melts. Now we're going to put a little bead flux on there. And with the hot air gun still cooking, we're going to activate that flux and reflow that solder one more time. Just to get them nice and even. Now we're just brushing off the top of it so that we can see the little dot. I feel like that's pretty good. All right. Here's where you pucker up. We're going to turn the heat on the hot air gun down to about 325. Get a little bit more flux. The chip settles right in, and then we budge it just a little bit just to make sure it's there. We're going to let the board cool for a minute or two, maybe 5 minutes, just to make sure there's no shock when we wash it off. So I'm going to be back here in about 5 minutes, and we'll get back to work on it. Alright, I'm back taking a look at this iPhone 6 Plus logic board. We've let the board cool off for a little bit, and we're going to clean it up as best we can right here. Try to get all this flux off of it. I want to make it look as good as we can. Now we want to be careful of getting that stuff around the edge right here. I think that has copper threads in it for heat. We don't want to get that into our logic board. So after we get this thing cleaned up, we're going to take a closer look at it just to make sure Let's take a closer look first. All the capacitors responsible for touch across the screen are present and accounted for. All the resistors there and there are present and accounted for. Get that crap off there. That off there. Resistors and capacitors around it are good. Alright, so it started up. You can see there is no flickering box at the top of this thing. Touchscreen works. 1, 2, 3. Down here works. I'll need to get the passcode to test it more thoroughly. But right now, I would say tentatively we're probably good. But let's do one more test here. we want to hold this and press the logic board, and we aren't losing any touch sensitivity around here. We hold the logic board, press the logic board kind of up in the area around the connectors, and we don't lose touch there. So we're going to remove the logic board again and put the covers, put it back in, put the antennas, all the crap back in it, put it together, and then give it the flex test and see if it still works. Good grief. Home button still works. Touch ID still works. We can go 1, 2, 3. Delete, delete, delete. So now until I get the passcode for this, my intermediate test is to push the clock up. I touched on the lower part of the screen. Damn it. And Touch ID interfered. Need a better test. Hey, what's up? So we're flexing the frame, holding the clock up, and it doesn't lose touch. So I'll get the passcode for this phone and then test it out a little bit more thoroughly with the icons and the swiping on the screen and that sort of thing. But right now, I'd say this phone is fixed. If you or someone you know has touch disease on your iPhone 6 Plus, give me a call at 573-567-0527 or visit my website at www.hotshot.repair.